Isn't the time isn't the tribulation time of Jacob's trouble when all Jacob returns at the second greater exodus? And then I think this is a typo, but it says which that tribulation comes from Islam. Does that make sense to you?
Okay. When you're looking at the events that lead up to the tribulation, one of them is the Ezekiel war, and I put the Ezekiel. This is opinion, and so I'm going to let you know that it's opinion from the get-go. But in Ezekiel chapter 38, it talks about a coalition of nations that come down against the nation of Israel. It uses their family names. And so you're talking about people groups here. And these people groups are identified as being Magog, Rosh, Meshech, and Tubal. And that is Russia. When you go back and you look at the people groups that were there, that's the people of Russia. And then you have Persia, Ethiopia, Libya, Gomer, and Togarmah. And those are all identified with Iran and Ethiopia and actually, parts of Sudan. Libya is what we would call Libya today. Gomer is a little bit more vague, and Togarmah is Turkey. And specifically the House of Togarmah is talking about Turkey. And those people groups have remained in those areas. Basically, part of the reason that Gomer is a little bit more vague is because Gomer migrated, and so there's some question as to what the people group of Gomer is all about. Some people think it's Eastern Europeans, maybe even the Balkans, and so that would be interesting. The majority of that group of people, those nations, is Islamic at this time. And so you have an Islamic attack against the nation of Israel, and those nations are destroyed. The armies are destroyed on the mountains of Israel. And not only are the armies destroyed, their nations are destroyed. And it even goes beyond that. There's a conflagration that hits Gentile areas, according to this. I just did a study on this last Wednesday in our Israel in the End Times study. And so when you see these nations destroyed here, it pretty much takes them out at the very beginning of the tribulation period. Russia is still in existence at the end of the tribulation period. There's a passage in the book of Daniel in chapter 11 that talks about armies from the far north coming down at the Battle of Armageddon, along with armies from the far east. When you get to the book of Revelation, when it talks about the Battle of Armageddon, it talks about the forces of the Antichrist along with the kings of the east are all coming down and fighting in the land of Israel. In Zechariah chapter 14, it talks about all the nations of the earth are coming down against the people of Israel. And so this is one of the reasons I believe that this takes place during the starting point of the tribulation, besides the fact that they're using the weapons for fuel for 7 years, which is an interesting period of time. That's the tribulation period, most likely. And so this event takes place. That's World War III. The Antichrist, the Bible says, rises out of warfare. And in that warfare, this is out of Revelation chapter 6, 1/4 of the earth is killed. And so you're talking about modern warfare there. You're talking about nuclear, biological, or chemical, most likely nuclear warfare. And in this passage, it talks about fire and brimstone raining down on these nations. And that could be talking about nuclear warfare also. In any case, I believe that World War III takes place, and then these nations are destroyed. Antichrist rises out of World War III. He brings peace to the planet. He makes a covenant with the Jews for a 7-year period, and then he defiles that covenant at the midpoint. And that 7-year period ends with the Antichrist losing control and having to fight against the kings of the East and some other nations that come down against him. But all of these nations end up turning against Christ when he returns. So when you're looking at the Ezekiel 38 passage, the Ezekiel 38 passage has a different group of people than the Zechariah 14 passage and the Battle of Armageddon in Revelation chapter 16. When you're talking about them, it's all the nations of the earth. It looks like when you're going through the book of Revelation, you don't see a lot of evidence of Islam. What you see is evidence of a revived Roman Empire, and so I think Islam gets quelled at the beginning point of the tribulation period. If you have a bunch of Muslims starting World War III over religion, you are going to have a group of people after that point who are going to be very quiet because they started World War III, and I think that again is why you don't have a lot of mention of Islam in the Book of Revelation.
Yeah, and going back to our previous question, when the Antichrist makes a covenant, you have this, conglomeration, this one world religion. It's like I've always wondered, how do you get Islam and Jews together?
Right.
And it's like, I just looked it up. Roughly between military and civilian, about 53 million people died in World War II. Mm-hmm. Now we're talking about 2 billion.
Right.
And when stuff like that's going on, people just want it to stop.
Right.
So
exactly.
the political pressure that you saw, there were no Germans that said anything after World War II. They were just silent.
Exactly.
Because of the shame and all the other stuff that was going on. And so you can see that where Islam gets brought in, the crazy stuff the Pope's doing right now, that he'll do anything. He's a free-for-all. And then you have this guy that's Roman, this Assyrian, this multicultural dude that comes in. He gets it to stop, and you can see him just all coming to the table.
Exactly. And it would be one of the reasons that the Jews would be able to rebuild their temple.
Right. At
that point. Because right now, the reason that the Jews can't rebuild their temple is because they've given control of the Temple Mount over to the Islamics, and they're specifically run from Jordan. Mm-hmm. And once you have World War III, started by Islam, essentially, you're going to have people say, back it off,
right,
shut it down, and we're going to do what we want here.
Yeah, and that's how Israel became a nation, is the aftermath of World War II.
Exactly.
Set the stage for that.
Yeah. And so they'll get their temple as an aftermath of World War III.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah.